Thank you, Sigrid, and good afternoon. It's wonderful so many of you chose to give of your time to attend the first part of this groundbreaking program. Volunteers First took a village of longtime AAUW California and Oregon leaders and a few non-members. Today's program would not have been possible without Cheryl Blakely, former president of AAUW Palm Springs branch, author and consultant with AAUW California, Barry Altland, who enlightened our understanding of why and how engaging the head, heart, and hands of volunteers increases member engagement, retention, and leadership, and consented to our using his book for this program. Sigrid Marantz, AAUW California Branch Leadership Development Chair, and Gloria Holland, Salem, Oregon branch member. I thank you all. Volunteers First is an awareness program designed specifically for leaders of volunteers. Volunteers First seeks serious consideration for a voluntary pivot from a transactional approach where leaders primarily assign tasks to a transformative approach where leaders primarily build and facilitate relationships. Volunteers First provides AAUW leaders and members with research-based information on how to discover, connect, support, and recognize volunteer members in ways that bring each joy as individuals. To wrap our heads around the importance of this pivot requires your knowing a bit of background on why and how we arrived at Volunteers First. Since 1881, AAUW has prided itself in being unique by conducting research, giving us guidance for legislative advocacy, and developing programs that empower women and girls externally, like ones you see here. AAUW's continuing decline in membership begged to be researched internally. Sandy Gabe, former AAUW of California president, made a bold decision to do just that. In 2022, former AAUW California members were surveyed and asked why they dropped their membership. Particular attention was given to answers of those who had been leaders and or actively engaged. Other than moving or illness, a significant number said they left AAUW because they felt unwelcome, disconnected, and just became disinterested in participating, even for the cause. Sandy challenged the AAUW Leadership Development Committee to find a new and different, but credible and effective volunteer leader program. Our educational journey took months of research. After reading Barry Altland's book, Engaging the Head, Heart, and Hands of Volunteers, and meeting with him in person, we decided to understand why we were losing members and how to make an effective leadership correction. Barry had us look inward for our volunteer motivators. Once done, Barry suggested our collective intrinsic motivators are likely the same motivators as those of most of our members. Interestingly, they are similar to the ones on Maslow's hierarchy of needs on this slide. Barry suggested all AAUW's leaders have to do is learn and focus on satisfying the intrinsic needs, volunteer motivators, of our members and modify our leadership best practices accordingly. We looked for and found credible research that supports Barry's theory. Volunteer leaders around the world were also seriously concerned about the drastic decline in volunteer membership. South American volunteers decided to conduct a study interviewing volunteers worldwide. The results were conclusive. Universally, people volunteer to satisfy one or more of their intrinsic needs, and those needs are to altruize, socialize, learn, and self-actualize. These intrinsic needs of volunteers look much like the higher needs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, confirming Berry's theory. Credible research indicates most AAUW members will choose to give of their time, talent, and skills when at least some of their intrinsic needs are met. Managing volunteers so they'll renew and lead is not a matter of how we run our business. Volunteerism is an affair of the heart. If you take home nothing else from this conference, remember this: fulfilling the members' intrinsic motivators for volunteering is what touches their heart. Fulfillment drives their choices for volunteering, and that joy is what sustains their passion for serving. The heart you see here represents this newfound awareness. If AAUW leaders want to increase and retain membership and develop leaders, they must pivot from focusing primarily on the task, policy, procedure, process, and business practices to a transformative focus on people. To sustain our organization, AAUW leaders must focus on volunteers first. Australians also studied volunteerism. They compiled many studies of volunteer leadership from around the world and came up with a list of specific leadership best practices to improve member volunteer retention, engagement, and leadership development. The results of the Australian study were universal. Successful leaders of volunteers are ones who build and facilitate relationships. It's their number one priority. We simplified the recommended best practices for how to build and facilitate relationships into 4 interchangeable leadership abilities: care, connect, support, and recognize. In this session, we will cover how to care and connect, and we'll cover how to support and recognize in the next session. To build and facilitate relationships with and among members, AAUW leaders must first and always genuinely care about each and every member. An AAUW leader shows caring by personally getting to know each new member, as well as getting acquainted or reacquainted with a renewing member who is not engaged. This is most effective when done in person, by getting together with a member over a cup of coffee in a small cafe, or at home, or outdoors in a park on a sunny day. Care means discovering what moves each member to volunteer, what interests and activities bring each member satisfaction and joy, what each member hopes to gain by being an AAUW member. Is it to altruize, socialize, learn, and/or self-actualize? Leaders must personally engage in meaningful, purposeful conversations. Listen and accept the members' heartfelt answers, even if their reasons for joining AAUW is not all that altruistic. What moves a member to participate varies for each person. Some may only want to socialize, to learn, or self-actualize. Some may want only to network for career or advance an AAUW-related cause. Just as young women, working women, and retired women all have different amounts of time to serve, all have different intrinsic needs for what they hope to gain by being an AAUW member. Discovering what moves each member to volunteer is the first step and key to member engagement. Open-ended, getting to know you questions can help leaders discover what an individual member hopes to gain by joining or engaging as an AAUW volunteer, as well as learning their skills, interests, hobbies, and time frame for volunteering and gathering. Be curious about each as a person. Prompt and listen for their ideas and suggestions. Share current and past programs. Ask for suggestions and welcome new and creative ideas. Be open to suggestions for new programs, activities, and ideas. This shows the member you care and she will be valued. After getting to know new and unengaged members, AAUW leaders are then able to connect them to other members who are involved in branch activities of similar interest. Connecting builds and facilitates relationships with and among members. The need for connection is powerful, especially now. Research shows a key difference between very happy people and less happy people is good relationships. Remember, AAUW's number one priority is not to assign tasks, even when connecting members to each other. Assigning tasks does not build relationships, nor does it serve the purpose of putting the wants and needs of our member volunteers first. And at this stage, it certainly might not bring them joy. Leaders can avoid the temptation to assign tasks and recruit leaders by focusing on connecting member volunteers with each other, one-on-one, in a small or large group, or even by Zoom. Branch leaders can get help with creating an enjoyable branch. Share the value of Volunteers First focus with all branch members. Model caring and connecting members to each other. Encourage all members to care about and connect with members they don't know well. Express appreciation to those who show caring and connecting. Forming a formal or informal welcoming team of interested members is one way to include all leaders, not just the membership vice president in Volunteers First. Welcoming members can meet in person with a new or unengaged member. Meet, greet, and sit with them at meetings. Follow up or partner with members to ensure they are being welcomed, included, and enjoying themselves. Creating a communication network keeps all members in the know with a variety of notices, particularly to new and unengaged members. Another suggestion is to regularly include circles of engagement in all gatherings. Circles of engagement provide members with an opportunity to connect with members they don't know, learn about each other, create understanding, and learn how to talk to each other in new ways. Circles of engagement where all members are given the opportunity and encouraged by other members to participate can be part of an all-member outing or interest group. Member orientation, having members share in decision-making and feedback, and even for yearly planning. Answering questions like, what do members need to make their volunteer experience more fulfilling? What do members want to keep doing? What's working? What's not working? What do members want to eliminate? What do members want to add? This might be a first step to a member acquiring interest in leadership. Now you're probably wondering, how is it possible for me to create time for circles of engagement when meeting time seems so short? Barry Otwin suggests limiting leader and speaker time to 50% of the allotted time and using the other 50% of meeting time for circles of engagement. Using 50% of the allotted time for circles of engagement gives members time they wouldn't otherwise have to think and to reflect, to interact with a speaker, or engage in meaningful discussions with others they might not know. Beyond socializing, which usually happens before and after meetings anyway. Connecting all member volunteers to each other is to connect them to our common cause, the AAUW's mission and values. Members sometimes leave an organization they perceive is not doing enough to fulfill the mission they chose to support when they first joined. In that regard, it's vital that branch members work with members, new and unengaged, to create an array of AAUW mission-related activities, programs, interest groups that give members the opportunity to experience the joy in belonging to AAUW. I would now like to introduce you to our special guest, Cheryl Blakely, MSW, University of Michigan, and recent School of Social Work Dean's Advisory Board member, retired former director of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and former president of AAUW Palm Springs branch. Cheryl was the first to suggest and show the value of including circles of engagement in branch programs. She is here this afternoon to share her passion for using circles of engagement. Cheryl?
I want to just describe a simple sentence to describe circles of engagement. There is no substitute for genuine human interaction among us. As we all know, since 1881, AAUW women have been coming together to engage with like-minded women around the table. As strong women, we have had to face daunting challenges and controversial issues throughout our lifetimes. Monthly branch meetings give us the opportunity to listen to impressive women share their personal stories, professional expertise, and their community accomplishments. All of these presentations have enriched our sense of purpose, enlightened knowledge of community, and allowed us to build lasting friendship over the years. I just want to second what Peggy said earlier in her presentation. Why do members leave? They feel unwelcome, disconnected, disinterested. We did 2 events to counter these feelings. Our first circle of engagement happened during the pandemic. We were gearing up for our annual Tech Trek fundraiser, which had to be by Zoom because we couldn't meet in person. We wanted to find a way to meet members' needs to socialize in a fun way. Our members love to dress up, and many hadn't had the opportunity to do so. We created a hats off theme. We had a dual purpose: to honor the women and girls we support through Tech Trek and give us an opportunity to share something personal about ourselves, both from long-term and new members. We asked members to wear a special hat and tell the story that made their hat so special. Members enjoyed learning about each other because their hat story disclosed aspects of themselves that brought back personal memories. This Zoom experience was fun, warm, engaging, and a unique form of circles of engagement. Excuse me. 12 Tech Trekkers went to camp that year. For the second Circles of Engagement event, while planning for the annual AAUW fundraiser for our branch, we decided to try something different. Again, we looked inward to the need of our members to connect with each other. We decided to encourage table discussion from two poignant books from our book club. We began with a brief presentation about Michelle Obama's book, All the Light We Carry, and Nina Totenberg's book, Dinners with Ruth. We asked members at each table to discuss among themselves two very deeply personal considerations about the moral and ethical issues raised in these two books. The two questions were printed and placed on each table. Number one, why did Michelle Obama choose to wear her natural hair instead of the braids she so desired to wear when she was First Lady? Number two, what were the ethical issues Nina Totenberg and Ruth Bader Ginsburg faced in their decision to not disclose Judge Ginsburg's serious health issues, knowing that the Supreme Court needed stalwarts who supported women's rights? Lively discussions ensued at each table, and members chose one person to report out comments. We got to know each other by sharing our common personal experiences. Regarding Mrs. Obama's hairdo, many talked about tough childhood and high school memories, fear of being different, and being negatively judged. Members said it worked because in small groups, no matter our age or background, we were able to discuss how our own lives were affected by this issue. When we discussed RBG's non-disclosure of her health issues that led to a missed opportunity for a justice appointment, the discussion focused on the reverence of her lifetime of service, respect for medical privacy, but also the need to consider the vast political needs that lay ahead. Members discussed the need to put lives on the line for a greater purpose, which led to a member's personal disclosure about, which led to all members' personal disclosures about family, friends, and relationships. After the report out by each table, I connected our theme with AAUW and fundraising for AAUW funds. That day, we raised more than in prior years. We cheered our collective accomplishments. I must also express the surprise and personal, heartfelt satisfaction I felt for the standing ovation that followed. That's why I joined AAUW and became a leader. Creating circles where members can share deeper thoughts and discussion focused on universal questions and issues where discussion is free and open, gives each a feeling of inclusion and belonging, and connects them in a powerful way to each other and to AAUW. In closing, both of these two circles were easy to organize and implement. Both outcomes benefited women and girls and stimulated member involvement and enthusiasm. I encourage you to use your creativity, your imagination, and your will to give circles a try. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, for taking me back to those really joyful days that we shared together, and for being here to share your knowledge and heartwarming inspiration. You are so appreciated.
Thank you again.
This is your pivot. As an AAUW leader, your first priority is not to assign tasks. Successful leaders of volunteers put the heart of your members, our AAUW volunteers, first. AAUW leaders do that by building and facilitating relationships with and among every member all the time. When we as leaders nurture belonging and joy within our membership, when we as leaders genuinely care for each and every member as a person, when we as leaders personally discover what moves each member to volunteer and make that personal connection, when we as leaders create circles where members can engage deeply and share openly with each other, then we will see growth in membership, an increase in member participation, engagement, and yes, even the desire of a few to lead and invest in sustaining AAUW. And yes, this Leaders will then experience the joy they hope to gain by becoming leaders. Thank you.